Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel prepares for another war with Hezbollah. It looks like Nato may soon start cooperating more closely with Israel, and one of the most famous bands in the world is finally set to perform in the Holy Land. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. It's been 10 years since the outbreak of the Second Lebanon War, but it looks like Israel is preparing for yet another threat from the north. Yesterday, the IDF held the largest civilian drill in Israel's northern community since 2006 to prepare for another war with the Lebanese terror group Hezbollah. The exercise practiced evacuation of towns and agricultural communities in the Upper Galilee Regional Council, all in preparation for a possible resurgence of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. There have been several cross-border exchanges over the past few years with the Lebanese terror group, and Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has openly threatened the Jewish state. Yet no major fallouts have taken place, and analysts believe it's because Hezbollah is too bogged down with fighting in Syria to launch a war against Israel. Despite the relative quiet, Israel wants northern residents to be prepared for a surge in upcoming violence. Last night, a former IDF chief from the Home Front Command warned that Israel could be pounded with over 1,200 rockets a day in a future war with Hezbollah. The number of projectiles is far more than Israel has endured during previous conflicts with the terror group. Israelis have also become increasingly concerned that Hezbollah could possibly be building tunnels under the border to infiltrate Israeli communities, although no tunnels have been found. Human rights abuses are being perpetrated all over the world on a daily basis. Yet only one country has endured scrutiny over its policies at every single session of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. That country happens to be Israel. According to a new report, more than a quarter of UNHRC resolutions passed over the last decade focus on the Jewish state. The Associated Press says that out of the 233 country-specific UNHRC resolutions passed over the last 10 years, 65 have focused on Israel. About half of them were condemnatory. Syria, by comparison, has seen at least 250,000 people killed, over 10 million displaced, and its cities destroyed since 2011, but has been the subject of only 19 resolutions. Shortly after taking office in 2007, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said he was disappointed at the Council's decision to single out only one specific regional item, given the range and scope of allegations of human rights violations throughout the world. The UNHRC has been accused of prejudice towards Israel by multiple nations. The United States has denounced what it views as an entrenched bias in United Nations institutions and an obsession with the Palestinian issue at the expense of other crises around the globe. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's spokesman David Keyes has pointed out that the UN continues to single out Israel, the one liberal democracy in the Middle East, and says that it's hard to imagine that a country with free speech, free elections, and minority rights is condemned more than mass-murdering dictatorships like North Korea, Iran, and Syria. Most people around the world are familiar with the story of Anne Frank, the little Jewish girl who was killed in the Holocaust, but managed to share her story with the world through a detailed diary. From 1942 to 1944, Anne and her family hid from the Nazis in an Amsterdam building. Today, their tiny hiding space has been transformed into a museum, and ILTV's Steve Leibowitz went to check out what kind of impact it's having on visitors.
What made you decide to visit Anne Frank House today?
I read the book many times, and I just thought it would be really important to see it.
And what's your impression after coming out?
It's overwhelming. It's actually like you get claustrophobic just walking through it and can't imagine actually being in there for any length of time.
Some people are concerned that maybe we're in a period where we're returning to some more anti-Semitism around the world. I don't know about where you come from. Are you concerned about that?
Yes, not as much as anti-Semitism, more anti-Muslim, but it's the same thing, like the ID badges, everything like that. It's sort of history repeating itself, and it's sad and scary.
We both read the book when we were younger, so it was always kind of something we wanted to do when we visited Amsterdam.
And what was your impression of the visit?
It's very moving. I thought the exhibition was great, the museum, all the different, the interactive things they put out and the opportunity for us to leave our own thoughts. I just thought that was great, definitely.
And are there lessons, do you think, to be learned today about what happened then?
Yeah, we were just saying before that it really kind of makes us think about what is existing currently in our world that we could kind of look at and think, well, in 50 years or so we're going to be doing the same thing, commemorating something and wishing we did it differently.
What made you decide to visit the Anne Frank house today?
Well, I read her diary when I was in elementary school, and I've always wanted to come here. I figured since I was in Amsterdam, this was my #1 place to visit.
And what's your impression after having visited her?
Well, before I was here, I did a study abroad, and we went to Germany and Poland and the Czech Republic, so I was able to see a lot of other very important historical sites for the Jewish community, and recently just visited Auschwitz and Birkenau. So coming there and then coming here was kind of a powerful experience for me, knowing that she had been there at some point in her journey.
She'd been and taken, and she was murdered by the Nazis, and of course she was a victim of anti-Semitism. Are you concerned about modern-day anti-Semitism?
I am a bit. I think it's very easy when we don't pay attention to the history and find importance in it that we can repeat it. So I do think that we could fall into the same patterns as the past, but hopefully there are enough people that are aware and are actively learning about the history and actively taking a part and making sure that things like that don't happen again.
I read the diary when I was in grade 7 at school, at secondary school, and her story had always haunted me. And my parents were refugees as well, not Jewish refugees, but Macedonian refugees. And I think the feeling of being persecuted, religious and social, political persecution had sort of haunted my family.
And now that you've visited, what do you take away from your visit?
I think the sense that religious and social tolerance just has to be preserved and protected and enhanced, especially in this terrible time we're living in with the situation in the Middle East, in relation to Syrian refugees, for instance.
What made you girls come from Indonesia to Amsterdam and to visit the Anne Frank house?
Well, first of all, we heard it was quite famous, and I mean, our generation, we don't really talk much about the history anymore, like how our elders did. So, like, as youngers, we want to know like what happened in the past and why did the world become as it is now, and how can we make it better, something like that. Like,
is there a universal message that can be taken away from a visit here?
well, I think the universal message is that in the past, people were very judgmental, and as we want to go to the future, it should be lessened, because it's very sad, like seeing the concentration camp, seeing this house. It was very sad how people were very discriminated in the past, even though we're all pretty much the same and we're all having the same red blood and everything. So why should you discriminate other people just because they're Jews or Christian or Muslims?
For months, Israel has been on a mission to reconcile with Turkey, and now it looks like the Jewish state's efforts to mend ties may enhance its relationship with NATO. Turkey is a member of the alliance, and last month the country even gave in and allowed Israel to set up representation at NATO's headquarters in Brussels. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, known as NATO, is an intergovernmental military alliance that's based on the North Atlantic Treaty signed in 1949. The organization is made up of 28 member states and is essentially a system of collective defense, in which member states agree to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external party. Turkey has been a member of NATO since 1952 and has corroded Israel's relationship with the alliance since Israeli-Turkish relations have fallen apart. Israel and Turkey once had a strong partnership, but it was shattered in 2010 after a Turkish flotilla sailed against Israel's blockade of Gaza, and 10 pro-Palestinian Turkish activists were killed. Throughout the past couple of months, both countries have been working hard to mend fences, and now it looks like Israel may be able to further close ranks with NATO.
Israel has much to contribute to NATO. I believe NATO has much to contribute to Israel. We've already begun that process, but I think we can extend and increase our cooperation.
Israeli officials believe Israeli intelligence, cybersecurity, and battlefield medicine capabilities could be major assets to NATO. especially since NATO is taking military action against ISIS.
In the Middle East, terrorist groups spread chaos and violence, posing a threat to our security and our way of life. As one element of that response, NATO allies are taking military action as part of the global coalition against Daesh. There are so many threats that are facing NATO that are similar to the ones facing Israel.
Israel wasn't a founding member of NATO because the country was only a year old when the alliance was established. Yet Israel has cooperated in security measures with NATO members on a bilateral basis. The Israeli government believes that if Israel joins NATO, it will be much easier to streamline Israeli intelligence through the alliance's command structure. It's clear, however, that Israel and Turkey must reconcile before Israel pursues stronger relations with NATO. For now, the Jewish state is celebrating its recent status upgrade with NATO. Israel will soon open offices in NATO's headquarters in Brussels, and will even credential Israeli ambassador to the EU, David Waltzer. The White House has just rejected an Israeli request to provide extra funding for the country's missile defense system. Now it seems like tensions are beginning to rise again between the Obama administration and the Israeli government. Today we're joined by the former ambassador to the U.S., Danny Ayalon, to discuss the future of Israeli-American relations. Thanks for coming in.
Shalom, good to be here.
So, was this an expected move?
No, it wasn't. Actually, it's a shocking move. You know, it's an unprecedented move. In more than 3 or 4 decades of this defense cooperation, this is the first time that the White House is really vetoing a bill by Congress for assistance, security assistance to Israel. So certainly this is something which is unprecedented, and it really points to deterioration of relations, not only the personal ones between Netanyahu and Obama, which have very acrimonious relations, but also between the establishments.
What kind of impact is this going to have on Israeli security projects? What projects in specific?
Well, unfortunately, we need a lot of investments in anti-ballistics, in intelligence, in anti-terror tactics and equipment, and this may delay. This may, it's not that Israel is helpless, but it may delay the delivery of very sophisticated systems to the military.
Major groups like AIPAC have opposed the White House's recent announcement. Do you think that's going to change anything? Will it have any influence on what the White House is doing?
Unfortunately,
right now?
I don't see any change, because Obama today, since he is on the last leg of his administration, he is immune to any political pressure. So I think he will hold his ground, and unfortunately we may either have to wait for the next president, or we'll have to be very creative in trying to persuade this administration.
So I want to change topics a little bit. We just, witnessed this tragedy in Orlando, this terrible terror attack, and how do you think it's going to influence the relationship between the United States and Israel, given the fact that Israel just had this attack in Tel Aviv and is constantly exposed to this issue?
I think that should put the two peoples together. I also hope that Europeans will understand that terror is terror is terror, and there is no difference between Palestinian terror in Tel Aviv and ISIS terror in Paris or anywhere else, Orlando or you name it. And unfortunately, it's the same motivation, it's the same inspiration, and it is true, not all Muslims are terrorists, but today all terrorists are Muslims.
How do you think it will have an impact on our future candidate in the United States, who is going to become president as a result of this?
Well, we still have about 5 months till elections. A lot can happen, but certainly anything which points to deterioration of security in the United States will help Trump. Anything which Trump may say, which could be provocative against whole communities without nuances, will help Hillary. So I think everything, it's still open.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and we hope to have you back again.
Absolutely, thank you.
Music lovers, we have some big news for you. Freddie Mercury may have never made it to Israel to perform, but his famous band Queen is about to set foot in the Holy Land. You heard right, Queen will be performing in Tel Aviv in September, and a special musician will be joining them on the stage. American Idol runner-up Adam Lambert will be filling in for the iconic Freddie Mercury, who died of AIDS-related causes in 1971. Queen was formed in 1970, and since Mercury's death, the band has continued to perform with other vocalists. Until they met Lambert, that is. In 2011, Lambert served as their frontman at the MTV Video Music Awards, and now he'll be traveling to Israel with the band in September. Critics say that Lambert is a great fill-in for Mercury because of his decent falsetto and theatrical flair. It looks like Israelis around the country are going to be able to get a taste of his magic when the 34-year-old Jew takes the stage in Tel Aviv's Hayalkon Park. If you're looking for a good stress reliever in Israel, we have the place for you. The Camel Club is the very first comedy club in Israel, and now they've become the first club to make you laugh in English. ILTV's Lara Frazinski headed over to the Tel Aviv Joint to check out their newest show.
An American, a Canadian, and an Israeli enter a club together. Sounds like a beginning of a joke? It is, and not just one, especially when it's Tel Aviv's Camel Comedy Club's English night.
Comedy Club is actually the first established club in Israel, over 20 years already. We're having basically shows all week, all night, every night.
And this night is a special production, a cooperation between Israeli comedians, new immigrants, and special guests from abroad.
Hi!
Okay, so Jenny, you're visiting Israel, right?
Yes, I'm here visiting family, and I wanted some stage time.
I don't need a man! I just need a dad.
And you're a comedian where?
In Los Angeles.
Wonderful. Yeah. And you performed there, and what's the difference?
I don't know yet. I haven't performed in
first
Israel.
time.
This is my debut, Israel.
Almost every night, a team of house comedians and various guests gather up and try to figure out what makes Israelis laugh.
Just want to laugh. Doesn't matter how about, just we want to have fun, want a good laugh. You can see the faces in crowds, in Israeli crowds. Dude, just give me something. I don't care. Just give me something, because the economic sometimes is hard to make a living, and the terrorism situations. And I think most likely inside, deep down there, we're happy people and we looking for it.
Thank you.
Right after making Aliyah, you pick up Israeli humor immediately.
The bomb goes off before it hits the ground, we made jokes. I'm usually doing stand-up in Hebrew, but I'm so excited to do English today. I moved here from LA because my husband wasn't happy, so I gave up a career as a stand-up and came here to make no money. And that's one difference between the U.S. Here they don't pay you.
During the times of the temple, when they would burn incense, and the priest would come out in a spiritual high, what do you think that was? What do you think they were burning? What do you think the incense was? I'm like, it wasn't marijuana because it's not native to this part of the world. Well, hash is, Hashem, it's right there in the name, man. Look at it.
In a place that may seem dramatic at times, humor is a good stress relief. And also, good comedy is appreciated here in the Camel Comedy Club. I'm Lara Frazinski, reporting with a smile for ILTV.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. There's nothing like a good laugh to brighten up your day, so today's word is tzchok, which means joke in Hebrew. Life might not seem so funny in Israel when you're listening to the latest news, waiting on the bus in the sweltering 90-degree heat, or trying to make your way through back-to-back traffic in Tel Aviv. But all of the daily stresses of life in the Holy Land are probably why Israelis have such a great sense of humor. Israelis love a good tzchok, and don't be alarmed if your Israeli friend tells you, "Ani met mitzchok," or "I'm dead from joking." She's trying to tell you that your joke is so funny she's dying from laughing so hard. After all, laughter is one of the best ways to get rid of stress, and almost any Israelis will vouch for that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Put on some sunscreen because it's a sunny 85 degrees outside today. Tomorrow we'll have a little bit of relief with partly cloudy skies and a high of 80, but don't get too comfortable because the temperature will jump back up to 84 on Friday. Alright everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.88 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight.